Everybody, today we are going to learn how to retopologize a mesh. Now, most of you, when you approach modeling for the first time, end up with very super rich and dense polygon meshes. And you can see here I have this chicken leg that is a pretty decently subdivided mesh. You can see all the little faces and the edges and whatnot. This would be rather hard to kind of edit and mold and continue to work with, and it would be extremely hard to bring into a program like Unity or a certain video game engine to make it very efficient, especially because it's a chicken leg and most likely it would be about this big on the screen. So what can we do to rebuild this mesh? Now I know what you're thinking. You're going, okay, I'm so sick of building my meshes over and over again. Well, you're going to be really impressed with the tool set I teach you today. We're not going to use any image planes because we already have our resource. We have our base. Now, if I turn off the mesh here, you can see that I've sculpted some detail in the mesh with the sculpt tool just to give us a little bit of a extra flair. And what we're going to do is take this high density mesh and create a lower res mesh such as this. As you can see, let me turn this back on, something a little bit more manageable. And I'm going to show you some tools to help you do that. Right? Just like everything in Maya, this is a problem-solving mission. So first, let me just kind of introduce you to some tools, and we'll go from there. The first tool I want to introduce you to is the Live Surface and Quad Draw tool. Now, Quad Draw is found under your modeling menu, under Mesh Tools, Quad Draw. This is one that the little option boxes is super important. You can see if I go ahead and open that and I drop down the drop-down menu, you can see it gives us all of the hotkeys of what can be done with this tool. I really like that. I actually wish more of the tools would do that. It would help definitely some speed for some of these tools. So Quad Draw is kind of neat. Now, what does it do? Well, we need to do some steps to get this tool to work. We're going to open up our modeling toolkit. If you remember, we talked about the modeling toolkit being kind of the one panel to grab things and to create our own custom tool sets, and we can kind of use some of the most commonly used tools here. And Quad Draw is here at the bottom as well, but we're going to turn on one thing here. We're going to want to make sure that we select our object in object mode, of course, and I want you real quickly to watch this transform constraint for a second. I'm going to go to the very top and look to my very last magnet. Now this very last magnet, if I click on it, it says chicken leg 1 is live. Well, I hope it's not live because then it'd be kind of gross to eat. But what we really want, what that really means is it's able to act as a 3D reference or a 3D image plane if you think of it in that nature. So even if you had really bad geometry, Quad Draw and Live Surface, and you see in the transform constraint, it's going to constrain anything we do to this surface. It's a really awesome tool. Let me show you how it works. All right, so I'm going to find an area. It really doesn't matter because this is just a demo. So I'll start with maybe this area on the chicken leg right here. I'll go down to Quad Draw, and it gives me this little tool, and you can see when I'm not on my object, it gives me a no sign, but when I am, it gives me a go ahead sign. And I'm going to simply start by creating a dot. Now, if you look, this dot is actually attached to the surface. I'm going to go ahead and create another dot. You can see the same thing, and maybe a third dot, and a fourth dot. Now, when I get 4 dots, we know for vertices, or 4 dots could equal a face, and I hold my shift key down and hover over or in between those dots, I get a face. Now here's the trick. If you hold shift and left mouse click, you've just drawn yourself a face that mirrors the edge or the surface. Now watch what we can do. We can click the corners and move them, and now when I move this, it's sticking to the face. It doesn't go off of the face here. And what we're doing is a method called retopologizing. We can grab the edges here. We can relax the edges if we need to. And retopologizing is a way to build a lower resolution mesh from a higher resolution mesh. It's all for efficiency. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just kind of make a nice shape here, something I'm happy with. That looks fine. I'm going to draw another 2 dots, and if I want these to react, watch this. I just hold shift. It already knows that they're together. And at this point, you can really start having some fun. So you can continue to draw your meshes. You can draw some up here. Draw one over here. And it starts to redraw your mesh. Now this does take time. This is not an instant method or an instant trick. But if you're really trying to get a good, decent piece of geometry, this is really nice. And so we could put these lines here. We can work on the topology and the flow. If I hold my control key down, it acts kind of like the multi-cut tool. I can add edges either way if I want to add more density. So what you see is some really, really cool tools. So those are your tools that you can use. And again, when you draw them, you can draw it anywhere. And as you can see, I can relax that. I can add edge loops. I can even delete by holding my control, not my command, but my control key and my shift key, and that will take certain areas out. So it's really, really a nice tool. You can see yellow means delete in this case, but it's a really great tool that will help you kind of, I don't know, kind of draw your meshes in a cool, fun way. So the other cool thing is if I continue, and I know I'm saying cool a lot, I'm just really excited, but if I continue to draw, let's say I draw a face here, and I want to connect these two, it does target weld for us. So when I snap, these are welded together now. I don't have to worry about going to the tool. And now, as long as I have a decent shaped surface, I can continue to draw these areas and create my mesh. Pretty neat, right? So hopefully you'll be very efficient with this, but take your time, really think about like how this mesh is bending. Remember, we can always go back later and change it. When you get to little areas like so, the mesh will kind of work with you. So very, very nice stuff. Control key again adds edge loops. The shift key will relax by itself, kind of smooths it out, helps you get a little better flow on everything. The command key will help you kind of rotate around if need be. But all of these have hotkeys. So if I open this up, you can see there's all sorts of ones. Now, tab actually plays an important role, and we haven't really used tab as much, but if I go ahead and get tab and I hold down, let's see, tab and let's try to do one here. Tab and left mouse button drags to draw quad strips. So let's hold tab. Look at that. It actually will draw. Now, I don't know if you guys saw that because I drew so many, but what this will do is it will take a face, holding tab, it will place a face for you, and then you can just drag your strips down. That's a really great tool. So I'm undoing here just so you can see kind of what it's doing. So if I hold tab and this, I can pull out an existing edge loop. I'm holding, again, just tab, and I'm using the existing tools I have, and I'm snapping my edges to them. So your ultimate goal is to keep drawing, and then when you're done, let's close out quad draw. Let's turn off the magnet, and I'm going to go ahead and hide that mesh. Check this out. You have yourself a pretty decent mesh, and that's going to be really, really important as we move forward. So think about that as you go forward, and think about that as you continue to push your meshes. Now, that's not the only tool. If you think this is cool, check this one out. All right, so I'm going to delete this mesh, and I'm going to go to our high-res chicken leg, and I'm going to pick a simple sphere. So follow along here. It's not too hard what I'm about to do, but it's really, the results are quite amazing. So I want to go ahead and lower this subdivision axis to maybe like 10 and 10, something very small. I'm going to rotate this about 90 degrees, and I'm going to just kind of, delete some of these edges. just so I have this kind of open, I need to be careful what I select, don't I? That looks good. We'll do that. Let's move it out of the way. All right. Now, if I'm modeling a chicken leg, this is kind of like the way I would start modeling. I would say, okay, this is kind of the front of the chicken leg. I'd try to squish it, right? And it would be kind of a pain in the butt. But check out this tool. What I'm going to do, and some of you probably already are seeing what I'm getting to, is I'm going to expand this along or outside of the boundaries of the chicken leg itself. Now, Maya has some really amazing tools to help us. So what I can do now is I can actually shrink wrap. You absolutely heard that correct. I can shrink wrap this geometry to the higher res geometry. So it helps me to remodel. Now check this out. This is really easy. Shrink wrap is a type of deformation. It's held in the surfaces, the modeling menu with the shrink wrap button. Now, shrink wrap, you have to select the object and then a target. But for the first time when you use it, you want to go to the option box and you want to make sure that by default it's going to say toward inner object. You want to make sure that closest is selected. I usually find this one works well. So I'm going to hit closest here. And I'm going to hit close real quick because I already have mine reset. And what I'll do is I'm going to select the surface. And it tells you what to do if you look. At the very bottom left of your screen, it says select surface and a target object, pardon me. So I'm going to shift select my target object, which is that sphere, deform, shrink wrap. I'll make sure it goes to closest. Hit create. And oops, I selected those backwards, so let me grab them this way. There we go. There we go. And when I do it, you guys are probably flipping out. I flipped out when I first learned this years ago. But now I have a shape. I don't know if you guys can see it in there, but you can see the wireframe that molded itself to this. So at this point, they're still linked together. And I kind of look at this kind of like the way that we use the curve tool. So I'm going to do a quick edit, delete all by type. If you do not do this, you won't be able to actually see your original mesh. But check this out. Wow, I just created a much lower res version of this chicken leg. And it fits rather well. Again, it's dependent on how many edges you have, but I could really do this with a lot of things. I could get a cylinder, and if I really wanted to, let's get a cylinder. Let's do that. Let's do, what did we have? 10. Just so we can match them up later on. Delete some of the edges. Get our multi-cut tool, hold down Control. 3, 4. That's too many here. There we go. I like it. And let's scale this up and rotate it into place. Now, you guys, this looks easy. It's really because they've made this super easy to work with. So it's, once you have the hard work put into your model, this is really the way to go. I'm going to have this here. And, just a little tip, if you're using your move tool and you want to change your axis of your handle, go ahead and hold W. And then when you hold W, hold your left mouse button down. Oops, don't want to change any of these. You can change it to object and it will kind of move along the object, which is kind of nice. So you can hold your W key down and your left mouse button. I just changed it back to world. That's the same thing as going all the way to axis orientation and changing it over here. Anyway, let's go ahead and shrink wrap this. So we grab one, we grab the other. If I do it right, I always do it backwards by accident. I shrink wrap it. Hey, I got it right on the first time. And when I'm totally done, when I shrink wrap, I can kind of mess with it now. So if I go to wireframe mode, it becomes a little easier to see that shrink wrapped object. Actually, this looks pretty darn good. So let's go ahead and edit, delete by type history. And let's hide this. And as you can see now it's pretty easy to work with. We have these two objects. we know tools that can, combine them together. We know tools that can bridge them together, right? So we'll do, just like we did with the pencil, we'll do 3 here. Actually, we did 1 with the pencil, didn't we? There we go. Hit 5 on our keyboard, and check this out. That quickly, I retopologized my mesh. Now, why would I do this? So we know all these cool new tricks. You can watch the video again. I'm going to do a quick mesh display soften edge to make it look a little softer. But why would we do this transfer? Well, let me show you why. This one little vert is bugging the living daylights out of me, even though I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to nudge it. Perfect. Check that out. All right. So we have our high-res mesh, and we have our low-res mesh, right? So let me move what we built. I went ahead and rebuilt this mesh pretty nicely. And you can see if I turn this off, it's all right. It's not absolutely perfect. I try to do some of the edge work in there where it kind of bends and folds in the chicken breast and the skin. But what I can do now is actually transfer them to one another. So again, I have the high-res mesh, which is red. And then underneath it, I have this low-res mesh, which is just slightly the same. And what we're going to do is actually transfer all of this detail from the high-res mesh to a texture rather than geometry on the yellow mesh. And it's really that simple. So the only trick is 2 things have to happen. 1, you need to have a low-res mesh. 2, that low-res mesh has to have its UVs laid out. So let's make sure I laid out my UVs. I did. You can see they're already laid out. I used all the tools in the UV layout tutorial just to kind of unwrap these. So that's good. You do not need to lay out the UVs for the high res. That's what's great about it. This would be a pain in the butt to lay out. This, not so much. It's pretty easy. So now we can start the transfer. So let's go ahead and do that. The second trick is they need to be right on top of each other. All right. So we're going to change from the modeling menu to the rendering menu. We're going to go to lighting and shading, and then we're going to find a category called transfer maps. We're going to open that up. Now I'm going to reset this just so it's the same as yours. Target mesh. What do we want our detail to be targeted to? That would be, in this case, the yellow mesh. The source mesh. What is the source of all the data? That would be, I'll do add selected. That would be the high resolution. We are going to do a normal map. File. We'll just go ahead and send it to our chicken folder. Chicken retop. There we go. And we'll make it a JPEG, and I'll call it normal map chicken. Cool. Hit save. Looks good. Can continue to go down here. Once we have our normal map and our chicken selected, and I just clicked on this golf ball to get this, we're going to continue to go down. We're going to change, hey, there's our powers of 2. We'll make this 1024 by 1024. And we're going to go ahead, just because this is going to look really nice, we're going to go ahead and make it medium or high. We'll go ahead and do high. And when you're done doing all these settings, so again, I only changed the file format, where it went. I changed the map width and height, and I changed it to sampling quality of high. This is going to bake, no pun intended, it's going to bake our chicken. I swear to God I didn't set that up. That's actually really bad, but it's funny. All right, so now that we have this set up, go all the way back to the top, and under the target mesh, I want you to select display and change it to envelope. Now, the trick here is everything in this envelope will transfer. So you don't want it 0 here. We want this envelope, which is this kind of pink envelope that's encompassing, to encompass as much of the model. Now, don't just crank it up. Try to be methodical about this. So let's do 2.5. Yours is going to be different than mine. 2.2, depending on the object you're using. See how it's still poking out right here? Let's go to 2.3. Oh, almost 2.4. And 2.5. 2.5 seems to do it. So as long as all that detail is within that envelope and we should probably have saved at this point. So let's do a file, save scene as. We'll call it, oh man, this is too easy. Baked chicken. Haha. Make sure and hit bake and close. This is going to take quite a bit of time depending on your computer. If you have a really fast computer, it's going to work quickly. If you have a really high resolution model, way more than this, this is going to kind of take some time. Your fan's going to kick in. You probably can hear that on the video of my fan kicking in. What this is for is a way to efficiently build models for real-time systems. So you go ahead and when you approach a model, go ahead and just build it. Don't worry about polygons in the sense of the count. You obviously don't want to like lag your computer, but build your model in a way in which you can visualize all the detail. You can always go back and do this method on all the different pieces to achieve a detailed result. And as you can see, Maya with the shrink wrap tool and the quad draw tool, this works really, really well. Back in the day, we actually had to just go back and kind of just rebuild it with extruding and all that. Now we can actually just wrap shapes around our characters, which is really nice. So this is finishing up here. We're about 77%. I highly suggest you don't go and fiddle with the internet when this is running. It is a very computer-intensive process. Here we go. We're getting there. Remember, the lower resolution mesh is the only one that needs to be UV'd. So we're done here. Let's hide the high-res mesh. And at first glance, it doesn't look like much happened, but when I hit texture mode or I hit 6, look at that. You guys see that? Let me hit 5 again. This is what it looked like, 6. Let's put these side by side. This is the high-res mesh. What I did was actually transferred that detail onto it. And when I put on my mesh, check that out. Let's look at this poly count real quick. Heads up display, and we'll do poly count. This mesh alone versus this mesh. This mesh has 9,728 faces. It has 19,456 triangles. I just transferred all that information to 278 triangles and only 165 faces. And if you didn't know, and I hit 6 on my keyboard here, which one was the high res, you can't really tell. So in the video game, when they're this far away, you want that one. You don't want this one. This is the more efficient model. And this method is known as normal mapping. What happened was Maya baked the texture into a file that looked like this. And so let me go to it. Let's see if I can't open this. Sometimes these don't open well. This should work. And a normal map is and it's behind it. Stop hiding. No. There we go. It bakes it into a 2D texture map. That's why it was so imperative that we laid out in proportion our UV map. So that is the concept of not only retopology, but taking a high detailed model and making it more efficient with a low detailed model using the normal map process. And we'll learn all different ways to make normal maps, but this is one of the most clever, most exciting ways you can build one of these in Maya today. So hopefully you enjoyed the lesson, and I can't wait to see what you guys do on your easy, medium, and hard models, and enjoy.